En vivo from the University of Texas at Arlington, this is Charlas Entre Amigos, an initiative of the Edge Center funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Title V, Part B, POHA grant. I'm your host, Alejandro Ruiz, coordinator of special programs for the Edge Center, y me gustaría darles la bienvenida. Whether you're a seasoned grad student, a fresh face on campus, joining us online, or just curious about the ins and outs of academia, then this podcast is for you. I'll be your host for this journey through graduate life. Mi gente, today we're joined by Ms. Tiffany Aguirre. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Biology and a Master of Science in Psychology. She is also a current doctoral student within the Department of Psychology here at UTA with an emphasis in neuroscience. She's also deeply involved with the Latinx Graduate Student Association here on campus, and I'll just let her tell you all a little bit more about herself. So Tiffany, bienvenida. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. It means the world to have students come on the show because that's the focus, right? We want to highlight y'all's experiences. So I just want to jump right in and have you tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you want to pursue graduate studies in psychology, and what has your path looked like up to this point?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have always loved the brain. The brain has always been something that has always fascinated me. It's so delicate and intricate and powerful and just like amazing, right? So that's always definitely been something that's like been my passion for. But my path has never ever been straight. It's always like bounced around and everything, like even for my undergrad studies, right? Like I started off psychology, and then we had a class that was like for listening, right? It was for counseling. It was how to be a good listener. And right before like the drop date, I had a good D in that class.
Gosh.
And I was like, I've never gotten a bad grade in my life. So I dropped the class, and at the same time I was taking an intro to bio class, right? As a freshman, as you do. And I told myself, if I get an A on this final, I'm gonna switch my major to biology. And I got a 99. So I was like, it's clear that this is what I want to do. I'm going to do biology. And so then I decided I wanted to be a doctor, like a medical doctor. I was like, I want to be a general surgeon. I want to be a psychiatrist. I don't know, something along that, but I want to be a medical doctor. So I went pre-med. So then I was getting, degrees in my biology, had to get, a minor in chemistry. And then I ended up with a minor in psychology because I had enough credits for that. And then I got a C in genetics, and I had convinced myself that no medical school would ever want me because I didn't have a mentor to tell me that grades aren't everything and that medical schools look for everything else, grades aren't the only thing. I wish I had somebody to tell me that. I didn't. And so I had convinced myself that I wasn't good enough to be a doctor and that I had given up that dream, basically. And so here I was with a biology degree, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do because nobody tells you that when you graduate with a science degree and you want to do something with it, you need more schooling.
Of course.
So I remembered I took a class at UTA. It was brain and behavior, and I loved it. So I was like, what am I going to do with a biology degree with chemistry classes and psychology classes?
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on neuroscience. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so that's how I came to graduate school at UTA. And even then, my path here hasn't been super straight. I've jumped around from a lot of projects, right? Like most people, from years 1 through 5 or however long they're in the graduate program, they stick with one thing, right? And they develop and continue that aspect of research through years 1 through 5 or however long. And for me, it was more like, oh, I want to dabble in this, I want to dabble in that, I want to dabble in this, right? And so my path has never, ever been straight. But I'm glad that it happened. I'm glad that I went through everything and endured everything that I had because it led me to right where I am. And
for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny that you talk about the path not being straight because I think from, the faculty staff perspective, we know full well that it never is, right? Most of us have been through that. Like I started in music and then ended up, I think a year into my program was like, this is not for me. And I ended up switching to Spanish. And the only reason I did that was because, like you said, I had enough credits in it, right, to graduate early. So I was just trying to get out. I didn't give myself the time to, like, explore different classes and take the time to, like, learn that. So I'm glad you had that opportunity.
For sure.
So in your journey, what's the most unexpected thing you've learned about yourself, particularly since starting graduate school?
Oh, my gosh. So I wouldn't say that I am, like, a type A person. I wouldn't say, like, I'm super organized. I need to write everything down. But I will say that I have everything in my head like a script. And when things don't go according to that script that I have in my head, then I start to, like, freak out, and, like, a breakdown starts happening. Like, I'm like, okay, what do I do now? What's happening? So the one thing I learned about myself is that I can get through it, and that I have gone through it, and that things aren't going to go according to plan, as I just told you everything. But you pick yourself back up and you keep going, because that's the only thing that you can do. And at first, you know, you have these moments, or I have these moments where I'm just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm freaking out. This didn't happen. This didn't, you know. But then I took a deep breath and I said, okay, that did happen. This is what happened. And now how am I going to push forward? What's my next plan? What's my next move? And so I've learned that I can do that. That is something that I'm capable of doing.
You have that resilience, right, to keep
yes.
going. Honestly, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned since starting graduate school too, is, like, one, you got to take it 1 week at a time, right? Take it one challenge at a time, and remind yourself that, you're not the only one doing this. You can get through it, right? Even if it may seem like you can't sometimes. So it can get stressful, right? But luckily, we have a doctoral student in psychology here, so I can't think of anyone better to discuss the stress of grad school with. So one thing that we hear a lot about as faculty and staff is student burnout, right? Students are going through their programs. It's hard to find support sometimes. You're not always clear-cut on what you want to do, so there's a lot of stressors that build up, right? Add to that, right, students that might be teaching, researching, they have families, they got kids. It's hard not to experience burnout every now and then. So the overall feeling can vary, right, from person to person. But you yourself, how do you personally recognize that you're experiencing burnout?
Oh, man. The first time I ever recognized that this was burnout was somewhere in my year 2, year 3 of this program. And I have always been the type of person who, you know, I turn in all my homework assignments, I answer emails right away, I'm showing up to class on time every single day. And then in year 2 or 3, I just couldn't. I just did not have the energy. I was terrified of opening up my email, you know, of getting an email saying, hey, where's this, where's that? You know, I was procrastinating. If things didn't have, like, a hard deadline, I would push it and push it and push it. Like, it was just, and I realized, and I was like, what is happening to me? I felt as if I didn't care, which was scary to me, because I knew this was something that I wanted more than anything in the world. I want to be in academia. I want to be a Latina professor in STEM. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. This is my calling. Why am I feeling this way? And then I took a step back, and I realized, oh my God, I have not given myself a break from anything, from all of this. And my body is quite literally saying, well, I'm going to take a break for you.
I'm shutting down.
I'm shutting down right now. We are not doing this. If you're not going to take a break, I'm going to take a break for you.
Exactly, yeah.
And I realized that's what was happening. And I was like, oh my God, I need to chill out. I need to stop for a second, take a breather, take a day for myself, you know? And so that's how I recognized that I was experiencing burnout. And it still happens, but at least I'm now more aware of when it does happen. Yeah. And I don't have to prolong it for so long. So
I think that's the biggest thing that I've heard too with working with students for 7 years now is they never know they're experiencing it until someone else points it out or they have that realization where they sit down and look at everything. They're like, oh my God, I haven't paused at all, right? I can sympathize. I've been there. So thanks for sharing. I think it's always so important to be open about your experiences, right? And Catalina touched on this in our first episode, that everyone hypes up graduate school. It's this amazing thing that's going to open so many doors for you, but no one talks about like the genuine toll that it can take on you as a person. So I'm sure the area of emphasis has a lot to do with it, as does structure, demands, and responsibilities. But how does the structure of your doctoral program influence your own personal experiences regarding burnout?
Yeah, it's so hard to try and balance everything going on, because in our program, we're expected, if you're a GTA, you're expected to, especially in the first couple of years, go to class, right? So you are a student yourself, to teach, and then to still do research. And you have to do all these things all at the same time. You have to do them well, right? You can't receive anything less than a B. And even if you get a B, that's like, hold on, wait a second.
Yeah.
And to be a teacher, I think in my year 3, so around that time that I had realized I was experiencing burnout, my year 3, I had just gotten my first 150 person class.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I was a third year, and they had said, we want to put you in charge of intro to psych, so you're in charge of all these freshmen, 150 faces.
Ooh.
And and so I was, and this class is yours. You're not, nobody above you is telling you the structure of this class, and you have to follow it, right?
You were in control.
This is your class. You teach what chapters you want to teach. You make the PowerPoints, you are in charge of this, and it was a lot of responsibility. And then on top of that, again, you have to do research, and they're constantly trying to push you to, okay, we want you to do enough research to go to conferences, we want you to show face at these conferences, we want you to do more research so that you can publish papers. Why aren't you publishing papers? And it was just, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot.
I think it's definitely one of those things people, like we said, people don't talk about, right? There's all these different aspects to it other than just studying, right? Oh, gosh. I do want to circle back on something with that thought in mind, right? And that was the idea that grad school is an incredibly rewarding experience, but that it is, and I quote, not for the faint of heart, right? Is this something you've heard before? And what's your take on that perception?
I have heard that, and it was my first year. I was a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed graduate student, first year, and a fifth-year graduate student. She was just about to graduate. You could see the dark circles under her eyes. You could see that she was tired, and she told me, if you didn't graduate with at least being on one medication, then you didn't do grad school right. And I thought it was a joke, right? I was like, oh, ha ha ha, right? And I can tell you from personal experience, I have been on an anti-anxiety medication because of how overwhelming everything was with grad school at some point. And then just last year, I was diagnosed with hypertension.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. And that was exactly what my doctor said, because he was like, you're 26, or at the time I was 25 years old, and he was like, we tried everything of, trying to do a better diet, trying to exercise more, and, all these, before we put you on medication, we want you to do all these things so that we don't have to put you on medication. And I still could not lower my blood pressure down. So I'm currently on medication for lowering my blood pressure, and so I was like, maybe there was some truth to that. I wish it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't want it. And I hope that at some point we stop that.
Yeah.
We don't have to have that. It's where it says it's not for the faint of heart, or if you're not on one prescription medication, you're not doing it right. I don't want that to be the truth.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be. That's something that we as faculty staff, especially with building out the Edge Center, are very conscious of. Grad school is already so much responsibility. We're not here to make it worse for you. We're in fact trying to make it better, right? So that you're not having to go to the doctor and then freak out at you.
I'm my doctor's just like, he's like, what? He's like, what's going on? Is there anything that's it might be stress. Like, what? What's your job? And I was like, I'm a grad student. And he's like, oh. Yeah,
and a doctor would understand.
He understood. So I was like, I get it.
No, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think a big takeaway here is that, everyone's graduate experience is going to be different, but there's these underlying themes that kind of recur regardless of who the individual is. I think as a staff member, what's important is having a support system, right? Sure. Being able to recognize when you need support, what are those triggers, right?
Yeah.
And knowing what helps recenter and re-energize you. So with that in mind, how important do you think self-care is to the graduate success?
Oh my gosh, super, super important. And it's funny because I have met some grad students who don't take any self-care, and they work on the weekends, and they, you know, they put in those long hours, and they, you know, they say, you know, where are you at? Why are you taking a break? And, you know, did all this. And I'm just like, first I look at them and I'm just like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you? Because I've realized for myself, like I said, when I realized this is burnout, this is what I'm experiencing, and this is not good for me. My body is quite literally telling me, if you're not going to take a break, I'm going to take a break for you. And so I was like, I realized I do need self-care. And I think everybody does, even if you don't want to admit it to yourself. Even if your body, I guess, can keep going like that, like, please take some time to, like, do some self-care. For me personally, and I know this is going to sound so girly and so it is, but something that is just my me time is every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I will go get a manicure or a pedicure probably like once a month, but like that is my me time of just putting in my AirPod. I will catch up on a podcast or something that I have. I'll put on a funny podcast because I want to listen to something funny. I want to laugh right now. This is like my me time, and I will just, you know, no emails are being answered, no texts, no calls, no nothing, because and I look forward to that.
Yeah,
that's something that I look forward to in my week. I'm like, okay, at the end of the week, I'm gonna do this, and it gets me through my week.
Yeah.
Some other things I have recently gotten back into, because I was an avid reader back before grad school, and then I realized, you know, let me get back into that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been doing, and I realized it's things that make me excited to do.
Yeah.
It's things that make me excited. So I know that this is a form of self-care for me if I am excited to pick up a book. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to read what happens next. And so I think it's important to try and find those things that actually excite you, that, like, when you think about it, oh, I can't wait to do this.
Yeah.
That is probably your form of self-care.
Yeah, it's a personal journey, right?
Right.
And everyone has their own things. Like, for me, my self-care is cooking. I love to cook. And I can't do it during the week because growing up in a Mexican household, you cook very complicated food.
No, for sure.
Right? So for me to throw down, it takes like a good 2 to 3 hours.
Love that.
And then I love to sit there and like savor it, have a glass of wine with my food, you know? But it's a personal journey, and we definitely encourage anyone listening to, you know, take a moment to figure out what are those things you like to look forward to, what gives you that energy and, you know, that good feeling when you're done with it. So thanks for sharing, and I think you shared some great advice today. So thank you for being open and vulnerable. Like we said earlier, it's so important to talk about the entire graduate experience. So again, thank you for sharing your story and your advice with our listeners.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, it's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have you back again. Mi gente, thank you for tuning into another episode of Charlas Entre Amigos. We want you to stay in the loop, so be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so that you don't miss any future episodes. You can also follow us on Instagram at uta.edgecenter for updates on all things Edge. Remember, whether you're a current graduate student or just curious about graduate life, we're here to support you every step of the way. Hasta la próxima, mi gente.